Hey YouTube, welcome back to LadyGi. Thanks so much for joining me again. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks so much for coming back. For those who don't know me, my name is Zenab and I am one of the owners of Affinity Academy. We're a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Academy located here in Calgary, Canada. And today we're going to be talking about resilience in children and how Brazilian Jiu Jitsu can be a great option for your child if you have a child that deals with challenge. Well, everyone deals with challenges, but if you have a child that doesn't really know how to navigate anxiety, or maybe they really struggle with self-love, and maybe they deal with bullies or any kind of challenge. And that's kind of what resilience is. Resilience is dealing with a challenge and your ability to bounce back from adversity. So we all go through challenges, but a lot of times for kids it's really tough, right? And for parents especially, we always want to shelter our kids and we don't really want to see them in a bad situation, but kids really need to learn how to deal with adversity on their own, and jiu-jitsu is a great and awesome tool to help them get there. So let's get straight into it. So what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to bounce back from a challenge. And one phrase that I always heard growing up is that children are so resilient, right? We've all heard that before. And to be quite honest, I never really understood what that meant, just because I went through challenges as a child, and now as an adult, there's so many adults walking around with so much trauma, so many issues that haven't really been resolved from their childhood. And so can we really say that children are resilient? They don't wake up one morning and just have resilience in them, right? They weren't exactly born with this superpower called resilience, right? They have to learn how to bounce back from a challenge and how to navigate the feelings that they feel when they're going through a challenge. And what ends up happening is when a child doesn't know how to deal with that, whether it's dealing with a bully or a death in the family or the loss of a pet or an illness, or it could be something as simple as a kid not allowing them to play on the playground with them, right? We have those little playground bullies at 2-3 years old, but it also can be a little serious, like going to a new school or moving to a new neighborhood, right? All of those changes that occur in a child's life can be very challenging for them to overcome. And if they're not addressed and if they're not acknowledged, those feelings are going to build and build and build over time. So a kid can go through sadness and anger and disappointment, and those are all very normal things that kids have to deal with, right? We all deal with it, but we all think as parents, oh, my kid's going to be just fine. Oh, they're going to be fine. You know, I turned out fine, so my kid's going to be fine, and no one really helped me when I was a child. Well, if no one really helped you, didn't you feel as a child that you could have really used a little bit of help? So if a child doesn't have the tools readily available to them, and maybe parents really don't know how to deal with it, that becomes a problem. And I know I'm talking a lot about feelings and, you know, all this psychology stuff. I'm not a psychology background. So disclaimer, I am not a psychologist. I just do a lot of reading in this topic just because we have a lot of kids that we serve at my academy. Half of our academy is kids, and I'm a mom as well. So I go through these challenges day to day, and I do my own research. I talk to different people. I listen to podcasts. So this is just all coming from my personal experience and the things that I've read and my experience through training jiu-jitsu and teaching jiu-jitsu over the last few years. So if a child doesn't know how to deal with all of these emotions, they can become very aggressive, they can become distant, they become disconnected, and then they can even start hurting themselves, right? They start to really hate themselves, and they start to think that, well, maybe something's wrong with me, maybe other kids aren't getting as angry as I am, and maybe I'm the problem, right? So they really start to doubt themselves a lot. They might start thinking that, well, I just can't do anything right, I'm so stupid. And they start to internalize all of these feelings, and they start to think, okay, well, I'm really different. And they'll even start to label themselves as the bad kid or the bad egg in the bunch. So with jiu-jitsu, because we're talking about jiu-jitsu in particular, we want kids, yes, they're going to learn how to fight. And a lot of times parents will call us up and say, my kid is getting bullied or they're dealing with all of this stuff, and I want them to learn how to fight. Well, that's great. You want your child to learn how to use their body in a bad situation if somebody's trying to attack them. But a lot of times bullies on the playground are not really physical. A lot of the times it's verbal attacks that the bullies are doing, or maybe it's getting to a point where it's becoming very emotional, right? So it's not really that kids are becoming physical, but they're being very verbal, and a lot of kids don't know how to deal with that. So how does jiu-jitsu help? Well, jiu-jitsu allows kids to be able to walk away from a situation and learn eventually that, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm just gonna walk away from this and I'm gonna be perfectly fine. So the objective here with jiu-jitsu, if you want your child to learn jiu-jitsu and you want them to overcome these challenges, yes, they're gonna learn how to fight. See that as a side effect, but we want them to be able to walk away from a situation and then not feel bad about it. So we want them to have that confidence enough to walk away and then be perfectly fine with it, and knowing that they made a really good choice by walking away, by putting their feelings first. And that's it. And that is the objective that we want with children by training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I'm going to go through 10 different benefits of how jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient. So let's get straight into it. Number one, the first way that Brazilian jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient is that jiu-jitsu helps kids solve problems. We want kids to learn how to solve problems independently. And as a parent myself, I know that we always want to shelter our children. We don't want anything bad happening to them. It's very easy for us to just jump in and fix a problem, even if it's something very simple at home, right? If they're doing it wrong, it's just a lot faster for us to do it if we just do it ourselves. But we want kids to be able to learn independently and solve problems independently. And it's okay for them to get frustrated. It's okay for them to get upset. We want them to be able to solve these problems on their own. And through that process, kids have to become uncomfortable. They have to become uncomfortable so that they can learn to articulate what they're feeling. And not only that, but coming to a solution as well. So jiu-jitsu is not a team sport like basketball or volleyball or hockey, where you're working with a team and you're working together to win a game. It's more of an individual sport. So yes, you are representing your team, you're representing your school, your instructor. So it's a team sport in that sense. But at the end of the day, it's you and one other person when you're in a match, when you're in a competition. Your team can't jump in there, or your parents can't jump in there and, do the competition for you. There's no one that can sub in for you like on a basketball court, right? So kids have to be able to face challenges and problems on their own in a high intense situation. So they have to learn to be on their own, and jiu-jitsu is a great way to do that because mom and dad can't jump on the mats, first of all, right? They're, like I said before, their team member can't jump in for them. So when that safety net is taken away, kids don't have a choice, right? And it's not just kids, it's anyone who trains jiu-jitsu. You don't have a choice, but you have to be able to deal with the situation with an attacking opponent who might be a little aggressive, but in that moment, you are the one sole person that has to deal with getting out of a bad situation. In jiu-jitsu terms, you're getting out of a bad position, right? Maybe you're knee on belly, maybe you're bottom side control, right? Those are really bad positions to be in. Maybe it's you're stuck in guard and you can't pass the guard, right? Those are things that kids will have to deal with, and they can't look around for help. They have to be able to deal with that on their own. And that leads me to my second point. Jiu-jitsu can help kids become more resilient by being in uncomfortable situations. So now you're not only solving a problem on your own, but now you're solving a problem while being very, very uncomfortable. So your adrenaline's going, right? If you've watched my other videos, I talk about this a lot. Your adrenaline's going, you start to sweat, you start to get very frustrated, you start to get a little bit irritated and angry, especially for children. I see this a lot in kids when they're stuck in a bad position, right? They start to get really flustered because now they're having trouble breathing. Now they need to learn to regulate their breathing. They need to learn to calm down. They need to learn to control themselves. And they also need to learn to control themselves when they're controlling their opponent. So when you get your grips or you have your partner in a locked submission, you can't crank on that submission, right? You still have to make sure that your partner's not getting injured. So while all of that's going on, kids still have to learn to calm down. So they're still learning to be uncomfortable, deal with it on their own, and then they're also learning how to calm down themselves. So by teaching kids jiu-jitsu techniques, right, they have to learn to think on the fly. They have to think, okay, my arm is trapped. What can I do with my hips? What can I do with my hands? Where do I feel my opponent's weight, right? They have to start thinking about all of these things while their adrenaline's going, while they're sweating, while their heart rate starts to go up. All the while, they're also trying to regulate their breathing and make sure that they're not getting hurt and that their partner's not getting hurt as well. So there's a lot going on. And it might sound a little scary, like, oh no, that's way too much for my kids. We serve hundreds of children year after year after year, and they really do learn how to cope with all of those things and get out safely. So in our jiu-jitsu school, we actually split the kids. So we have a 6 to 8-year-old age group, and then we have the 9 to 14-year-olds. So for the younger group, they usually do like a 2-minute round. They do at least 3 2-minute rounds at the end of class. So rounds is what, if you're not familiar with jiu-jitsu, that's when they start to spar, right? So in jiu-jitsu, we call it rolling. So we'll do 3 2-minute rounds for the younger kids at the end of class. And every time they roll, right, they have to deal with all of those things over and over and over again. And every time they're put into another uncomfortable situation, they learn to pick themselves up, and they have more and more motivation to do better and better each time. And not only that, they're also getting promoted. So they know that their coach is walking around, right? They're looking to see who deserves their next promotion. They're looking to see who's being a really good partner, right? So yes, kids do get angry sometimes. They get a little bit frustrated, but they have to learn to cope and calm down. And if a coach sees that, okay, this person's getting really angry, maybe they're lashing out at their partner, right? That shows that you don't deserve your next promotion. So there's an incentive for kids as well, but they don't see it in the same way that parents will see it. For parents, it's okay, you're learning how to be uncomfortable in a bad situation. For kids, all they're seeing is that I want to get my next promotion, so I have to behave, I have to be a good partner, I have to listen in class. So it's a win-win for both parents and for kids. Okay, so number 3, the third way that jiu-jitsu can help your child build resilience is jiu-jitsu is also a very effective way for parents and kids to build an emotional connection for those that train jiu-jitsu. So if you're a parent, you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't train jiu-jitsu. Well, maybe you need to start considering training, because parents and kids who do train jiu-jitsu, they're able to understand each other a little bit more by understanding that jiu-jitsu is difficult. I mean, how many adults out there feel that when they were children, their parents didn't understand them. Their parents didn't understand why certain things made them tick or why certain things made them really upset. There's so many adults out there that walk around with all of these issues, and it's because of childhood trauma. Like 9 times out of 10, a lot of it has to do with someone didn't understand them when they were a child, and then they were misunderstood, and it led them to behave a certain way. So we don't want that for our kids. We want to be able to understand what makes them upset. And by training jiu-jitsu, you really get to understand how difficult jiu-jitsu really is. And if your child didn't get the submission that they want, or they weren't able to escape a certain position, you knowing how difficult it is, you can empathize with your child, and you'll understand what it's like to be stuck in a bad situation by somebody who's a lot stronger than you. It's really hard for parents to understand that by sitting on the sidelines. And the worst thing is when I see parents get mad at their kids for not doing their shrimps properly, or not getting a submission, or whatever it is, and they themselves don't train jiu-jitsu. It just grinds my gears, because you are sitting there on the side day after day while your kid is putting in the work. You don't know how difficult it actually is. So for you to sit there and get mad at your kid, buddy, put on a gi, get on the mats, and understand what your child goes through so that you can better understand your child, and then you can help them work through those challenges. You can tell your child until you're blue in the face that you understand that it's okay, but once you're on the mats, you'll really understand that, you know what? This is what jiu-jitsu is, and I understand that this is not easy for you. Okay, so yes, you can put your child in a program, but parents, you have to kind of do the work as well. And maybe some of you are, right? You're putting your child in therapy, or maybe you're getting them coded at school, or you're giving them all of these tools. But for you to really truly understand what your child is going through and the frustration that they're feeling and how to navigate those frustrations and how to control those frustrations, you should try putting yourself in their shoes. And jiu-jitsu is a great way to do it, right? You can't go to school with them and deal with their bullies, but you can learn jiu-jitsu and understand what it feels like to be stuck. And it's also really fun because then you have something in common with your child, right? You're going to jiu-jitsu class together, you have identical gis, right? You have the same instructor. It's something that you can have in common with your child. And what's more beautiful than that? And then you'll be able to model resiliency with your child. A lot of times kids say things like, well, you're just saying that because you're my mom, or you're just saying that because you're my dad. But if you put yourself in that challenging situation along with your child, then you can really truly understand and you'll be able to bond and connect with your child more. All right, let's move on to number 4. The fourth way that jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient is that jiu-jitsu promotes healthy risk taking, and kids need to learn how to take risks and that it's okay to be afraid of taking those risks. Parents, we're all guilty of being helicopter parents in some capacity. We either try to protect our kids from getting hurt verbally or physically, and sometimes it's within reason, right? We have to teach our kids how to cross the street safely, or that we wear a helmet when we ride the bike, or we buckle in when we get into the car. But sometimes parents can take it a little further than that, and that can be very triggering for children. Sometimes parents might have their own trauma. Maybe you fell off your bike when you were a child and you never really got over it, and then you kind of saran wrap your child when they're going out to bike. Or maybe, something happened in your childhood and you don't want your child to go through the exact same trauma. So we start to shield and set a whole bunch of unhealthy boundaries for our kids because we just don't want them to go through the same thing. And again, like I said, sometimes it's within reason and it's in the best interest of their health and their safety. But I'm talking more about how this can affect your child if it's not done in a healthy way. And if we do it in an unhealthy way and we're projecting all of these feelings onto our child, right, your child is not going to learn how to take healthy risks. Kids need to learn how to step out of their comfort zone. They need to learn that there are ways to feel safe even if you're feeling really scared. So how does jiu-jitsu come into play? Well, simply put, in jiu-jitsu, someone's trying to attack you. Someone's trying to take you down. Someone's trying to throw you onto the ground. Someone's trying to sit on top of you and try to break your arm or choke you out. So kids need to learn how to deal with a resisting opponent. And you'll only understand this if you train jiu-jitsu. When you go into a competition, every single person I've ever spoken to, even if they're world champions, will always have a little bit of fear in them, right? You get those butterflies in your stomach. You get very frightened every time I'm put with a new partner, even in class and it's a safe environment and it's my academy, I still have a little bit of fear in me, and that's totally okay because I don't know what the outcome is going to be, right? And kids that have anxiety, they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's when we start to think, okay, this is a little bit too risky because I don't know what's going to happen, right? So if you're someone who plays the stock market, maybe you do trading online, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. When you do investments, you don't know how your investment is going to go. It's a risk that you have to take. When you open a business and you invest in your business, you don't know if your business is going to survive or not. It's a risk that you have to take. And through my research, I also learned that kids that watch TV shows over and over and over again, so they have this one TV show and they watch it over and over and over again, it's because it's their safety net. They know what's going to happen because they've done it so many times. So if there is a child that will only play it safe and will only do things that are safe for them, they're never going to learn how to take risks and grow as a result of taking that risk. And in jiu-jitsu, you never know what the outcome is going to be. Even if you're up in points and you think that you're going to win the tournament and you're maybe you have 10 points against your opponent and they only have 2 points, anything can change at any given moment because your opponent can slap on a submission and then they end up winning the match. And that's what makes jiu-jitsu different from team sports, because in a team sport, a lot of times it doesn't matter. It's whoever has the most points is going to win. But in jiu-jitsu, even if you're up in points, your opponent can slap on a submission, they can transition, put you in a locked submission, and then they end up winning that match. So that in itself will allow your child to take risks, get put into uncomfortable situations, get a little bit frustrated, not knowing what the outcome is. And at the end of the day, they're going to walk away unhurt, right? They're going to tap out and they're going to learn from that mistake. And that's what taking a risk is all about. You learn from your past mistakes. And when kids learn to take risks in a healthy way, it allows them to grow. It allows them to push themselves further to get better and better and better each time. If you're enjoying this video so far, give it a thumbs up. We're going to move on to number 5. So the 5th way that jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient is that jiu-jitsu will teach your child how to lose. And nowadays, kids just don't know how to lose. I cannot stand the participation medals and that everyone's a winner. Like, I get it. I want to see my toddler happy. I want to see my child happy. But if there's 3 first place medals and everyone's a winner and everyone gets a ribbon by the end of the event, and they go through this year after year after year from preschool to kindergarten to grade 1, 2, 3. By the time they're in grade 4 and 5 and they're starting to get into those older grades, they're never going to learn how to be competitive, and they're never going to learn that, not everyone is going to be a winner. Not everyone's going to get first place. You're not always going to have everything go your way 100% of the time. One day they're going to apply for a job and not everyone's going to get the job. Kids need to learn how to push themselves. If they're going to write an entrance exam one day, not everybody's going to get in. And I know some parents have a problem with that part of society, how everything has to be a competition, but at the end of the day, that is how our world works, and there's really not much you can do about it unless you're constantly putting your kids in programs that allows everyone to win 100% of the time. They need to learn these life skills. Losing is an outcome that they just need to learn to be okay with. They need to learn that they might not get the scholarship that they applied for, or they might not get the job that they applied for, or the house that they want, right? They need to learn these things. And they also need to learn that if you want something so desperately, you have to work hard. And that's something that across the board, they just have to learn. If they want a car when they're 18, they're gonna have to learn to work hard, save money, go to work, use their time well so that they can earn that car. And how does jiu-jitsu help them do this? Well, there's always going to be a winner in jiu-jitsu, and there's also going to be somebody who loses in jiu-jitsu. They learn how to be happy for their opponent, right? So part of that is you not only lose, but now you have to show sportsmanship to your opponent. And it's not like you have this entire team behind you, like in team sports like hockey, basketball, where everyone loses together. It's you lost that match, right? You are the one that competed and you lost that match. You made some mistakes, and now you have to learn from those mistakes, and someone else won, and now you need to go shake their hand and tell them congratulations, thank you for the match. Okay, and while they do all of this and while they go through all of these motions, they learn that, okay, I made a mistake, now I need to fix that mistake. Now I need to change the way that I train, or not just train hard, but now I need to train a little bit smarter. And through that process, they'll learn to understand their emotions a little bit better. They'll learn to accept defeat. They'll learn to not get so angry and not so frustrated, that there's always going to be a next time as long as I work hard for it. And there's nothing wrong with getting angry, right? Kids are going to get angry. We will get angry. It's something that we're born with. We're born with this emotion. It's just how we deal with that anger and how we deal with that in a healthy way, especially when there are other people involved. That is what we want to teach them. And this leads me to my next point, number 6. The 6th way that jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient is that they need to learn how to make mistakes, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and that everybody makes mistakes. A lot of kids who deal with anxiety, different types of anxiety, they become very critical of themselves, and they think that, okay, well, I made a mistake, I must be really stupid, I must be really dumb, I can't really do anything right. So they start to have all these negative thoughts, they pile up, they internalize them, they start to hate themselves, right? We don't want kids to go that route. We want them to learn that, yeah, you made a mistake and that's okay. You're gonna make more. You're gonna make tons of mistakes from now until the day that you die. You're going to make mistakes every single day, and it's okay. It's okay to make those mistakes. We don't want kids criticizing themselves, right? And sometimes, yeah, you need to be a little bit critical. You need to be able to constructively criticize yourself. And I do this when I compete sometimes, whether I'm competing or even if I'm in class, I like to video my training so that I can look at it after and critique myself and say, okay, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this. So kids need to learn how to do that in a healthy way so that they learn from those mistakes. And that's why we make those mistakes, is so that we can learn from them. So jiu-jitsu is a great way that kids can learn how to make those mistakes, because let's say they are getting armbarred all the time, or they're getting their guard passed all the time. They'll learn, okay, well, I'm the one who allowed my partner to pass my guard by doing X, Y, and Z. Now I need to change up my strategy and learn from that mistake. So jiu-jitsu is a great way for kids to learn that. And they will learn this over and over and over and over again, to the point that they will become resilient, and they will learn that it's okay. And it happens to everyone, and it's part of the package, and it's just part of life. And in doing so, additionally, they'll also learn to ask for help. They'll learn there's always going to be someone else in the room that's a little bit smarter than I am, and I can ask them for help. I can ask my opponent for help. I can ask my other teammates on the mats for help. I can ask my instructor for help, right? And it's okay to not know everything all the time. No one is always going to know everything, right? So kids need to learn that everyone is learning, everyone makes mistakes, and that it's okay to ask for help when we need it. And again, if you're considering putting your child in jiu-jitsu, always check with the academy and ask them what their training philosophy is for children. Ask them what type of training the instructors were given when they're dealing with kids who deal with all of these issues, right? So every academy is going to have a different way that they approach teaching jiu-jitsu. So if you're worried about that, definitely have a meeting with them, sit down and ask all of these questions. All right, my next point, the seventh way that jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient, is that they learn delayed gratification. So jiu-jitsu is a performance-based art, which means that your promotion, whether you get a stripe or you're moving on to your next belt, is going to be delayed, and it's not always going to happen when you think it's going to happen. And as we parent young children, and I do this as well, and I don't see anything wrong with it, we're constantly cheering our children on, right? They learn to take their first step. They learn their basic colors. They draw a beautiful picture for us, right? We end up cheering them on. Yay, you did it. Great job. I love this, right? And that's our way of showing support, right? Which we should be doing. But this is what it does to a child. They always think that they're going to win something by doing something. And in jiu-jitsu, that's not always going to be the case. You have to work really hard to get a promotion, and you're only going to get it if your instructor thinks you're ready for it. What you need to remember about jiu-jitsu is that the learning curve is very long. So it takes 10 plus years on average for an adult to get their black belt in jiu-jitsu. And a child under 16 will never get their black belt until they become an adult, and they have to have a certain number of years and their skill set, et cetera, in order to get their belt. So you won't ever see a 12-year-old walking around with a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It will never happen. It has never happened. It's not part of the rule set. Unlike other martial arts like Taekwondo, karate, you see 12, 13-year-olds walking around with a black belt. That'll never happen in Jiu Jitsu. So that delayed gratification will allow kids to work harder on themselves and learn to be patient in the process. And not only that, kids will learn consistency, which is essential in jiu-jitsu. There are days that your child might not want to train, but if they want that promotion, they have to get their butt to class. And unfortunately, I see this all the time. A lot of parents will give in to their kids. Okay, you don't want to go today? That's okay. You want to quit jiu-jitsu? That's okay. A lot of parents will give in to their kids, and you are setting your child up for failure when you do this. I know that parents come with the argument that, I don't want to force my kids. I want them to be able to choose what they want to do. I don't want to force them, but what are you really teaching them? That, okay, you're not getting promoted. It's going to take too long. You're working really hard and it's not going where you want it to go. Okay, fine, you can just quit. Personally, as a parent, that does not work for me. I want my kids to learn how to be consistent, how to learn that getting something grand like your next belt is going to take time. You need to work hard for it. In the process of doing that, you're also teaching your child what a commitment is. So you've signed up for jiu-jitsu, you sign them up for 6 months, 1 year, whatever their term is, right? You need to see to the end of that term because that is what you signed up for. That is the commitment that you made. So, if you're just allowing your child to quit whenever they want because, they're not having fun anymore, or, unless of course there's something wrong, maybe the instructor isn't treating them well, or you're just not getting the value that you thought you were getting when you signed them up, right? There obviously are going to be reasons why you're going to allow your child to quit, but if you're just allowing them to quit because, well, the other kid got promoted and my kid didn't get promoted, well, let's just quit jiu-jitsu now. That is absolutely ridiculous, and you need to think about what message that's sending your child. I mean, I always make the argument that, okay, well, if my child doesn't want to wash their hands after using the bathroom, am I gonna just allow them to not wash their hands because I don't wanna force them to wash their hands? No, there is a benefit to washing your hands, right? You need to eat your food with clean hands. You need to wash your hands after using the bathroom. If my child doesn't wanna go to school because, well, they just don't want to go, I don't want to force them. No, of course not. They have to go to school. They have to learn to read or write, right? I know kids that hate reading. They absolutely hate reading. They can't even pick up a book. But reading is very beneficial to their development. They have to learn how to read. There are things that you just have to do that are good for you, and there are benefits at the end of it, but you have to learn to go through the process, even if that means that you're not going to get promoted when you want to get promoted. You have to learn to earn that promotion through hard work and consistency. All right, let's move on to number 8. The 8th way that jiu-jitsu can help your child build resiliency is that jiu-jitsu will foster self-love. Kids who go through adversity, if they're being bullied, we all know that if a child is getting bullied, they will start to really hate themselves. If they have an absent parent in their life, they start to think, okay, well, maybe it was my fault. Maybe I did something to cause my parent to not want to be with me anymore. And if they go through body shaming, right? Or if they notice that, okay, I'm a little bit bigger or I've got really skinny legs, they'll really start to hate who they are when they look in the mirror. And whether they're girls or boys or whatever they are, their height, their weight, their size, if a child doesn't have a reason to love their bodies, they're not going to love their bodies. They're not going to love who they are. And that's also why people end up in toxic relationships, is because they're finally getting some kind of attention that they didn't get when they were younger. And then that relationship becomes very toxic. And then again, they start to hate themselves. They start to have all this self-doubt. So how does jiu-jitsu help combat this? Jiu-jitsu, being the sport that it is, size does not matter. Strength does not matter. What it does start to matter when you're in a competition setting. That's why we have weight classes and different divisions and age groups and stuff like that. But when you're on the mats and you're in class, you sign your child up for jiu-jitsu, they're going to learn how to love their bodies because they're going to learn how capable their bodies are. Whether they're going up against a bigger opponent, a more skilled opponent, they're going to learn that, wow, I didn't know I can move my body like this. Wow, I didn't know I can stop somebody from passing my guard just using my legs. I didn't know that I can lock up a triangle and choke somebody out just using my legs, right? They're going to learn all of these things and they're going to start loving their bodies for the way that they are. If they have long limbs, they're going to learn that certain types of guards were made for people with long limbs. If they have short, thick legs, they're going to learn that their triangle is going to be deadly because their legs are very thick. There are certain jiu-jitsu techniques that work really well for certain body types. And once they learn that and they start to see it themselves and they have a reason to love their bodies, they're going to love it. And this leads me to my next point, number 9, is that kids learn how to reframe. Now, reframing is a cognitive psychological technique. And what it is that you learn how to see a negative situation in a positive light. So let me give you an example. So for children who, let's say they have anxiety in this context, or depression or PTSD, kids can learn how to take something negative that they see in themselves and turn it into something positive. For example, they'll start to see their bodies in a different light. They'll realize that their bodies were meant for so much more than they thought. And they start to show compassion for their bodies, and they start to appreciate what their bodies can really do. And that they might not have what someone else has, but that someone else doesn't have what they have either. They can do chokes with their legs. They can control somebody with their arms. They can sit on top of someone. They can, they can take control of someone who's being very aggressive using their body. And they are doing that themselves. Mom and dad aren't doing it for them. Their instructor isn't doing it for them. They're doing that themselves because they worked hard, because they put in the work, because they were consistent, because they put themselves in a bad situation, because they learned how to regulate their breathing and their frustration, and they learned how to calm down. So through that entire process, they will learn to really love their bodies and appreciate what their bodies can do for them. And they'll also learn as they get older, right? So these are more like teenage years, they'll learn how to make a bad situation in jiu-jitsu work for them. So they'll start to work on themselves, change their game instead of trying to do what everyone else is doing, and they'll learn how to make jiu-jitsu work for them by choosing different techniques, by doing trial and error. So they'll learn how to problem solve throughout that process. All right, so we're on number 10. If you've stayed with me this long, great job. Number 10, the 10th way that jiu-jitsu can help your child become more resilient is kids will see that they can do hard and challenging things. Jiu-jitsu is not easy, and it's especially not easy if you're new to the sport, if you've never done it before, if you've never done anything that physically taxing. It's not easy if you're already an athlete and you're used to working hard and you're used to playing all these sports. It's something that you really have to improve, not only physically, right? You're training and learning all those techniques, but mentally, you have to learn how to be okay and be uncomfortable and work hard and being consistent and all of those things. You learn that jiu-jitsu is challenging and I can do something very challenging. And that's why jiu-jitsu is also called the game of human chess, is because there's a lot of strategy involved in the game. Not everyone can just perform jiu-jitsu. You really have to understand your body and understand the technique and understand and analyze how your opponent is moving in order to strategize how to effectively overcome whatever it is that they're doing. And additionally, you have to be able to apply those techniques again and again and again and again on different body types. So kids will learn that they can do difficult things as long as they stick to it and they are consistent. And kids can only do that for themselves. And I've heard so many success stories from parents whose kids have trained at my academy. I've had so many parents tell me that, after just a year of training, their child is completely different. They carry themselves differently. They're more vocal. They talk more about their feelings, and they're more confident in walking into a space that they're unfamiliar with. So I hear all of these successes through parents, and when parents are seeing it, when I'm seeing it on the mats and the child is seeing it, I mean, there's nothing more priceless than that. And I would argue that no other sport in the world will ever come close to the benefits of training jiu-jitsu for children. It is by far one of the most effective martial arts in the world. If you've never done it before, you need to try it. You need to get your child in it. Look at different academies, ask questions, tell them what your concerns are, let them know what challenges your child deals with so that you can, help the instructors help your child. So if instructors don't know that your child deals with all of these issues, right, all these challenges, they're not going to know how to best approach your child. So make sure you have those conversations if you're looking for a jiu-jitsu school for your child. Every school is going to be different. Every jiu-jitsu school operates differently. They have a different philosophy, a different approach. So make sure that you're asking those questions and let them know what needs your child has and how they can help you overcome them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with people who you think might benefit. And you guys will catch me in my next video. Bye.